City Council chambers for the January City Council meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Clerk, please take the roll.
Present.
Present.
Here.
Present. Present.
Here. Present. Present.
Present. Everyone please rise and please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, under public acknowledgments and commendations, Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, President. This past week, we lost one of our citizens, Mr. Joseph Dwyer. Joe is a good friend of mine. He was also a long-standing teacher in the city of Cranston, former basketball coach at Cranston West, and he was a longtime member of this city council representing Ward 6. So through the President, I'd like to take a moment of silence in Joe's memory.
Thank you, Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you.
Any additional public acknowledgments or commendations? There being none, I'll move on to the next section, which is public hearings. Before I begin public hearings, one quick statement, actually two. We will be amending the solicitations ordinance this evening, and per council rules, if those amendments do pass and the bill passes as amended, we will have to have a special council meeting to have a hearing on the final bill as amended. So we will be amending it tonight. Just want to let the group know that. And additionally, because of the volume of people in the dais here tonight, we're going to be limiting comments to Cranston residents, and we're going to be limiting it to 2 minutes tonight. So please, we have a lot of people here. We want to get as many Cranston residents through as we can. So I'm going to start with Tom Wojcik. And name and address to the record, please.
Thank you, Council. My name is Tom Wojcik. I live at 11 Hall Place in Cranston, Rhode Island. I'm here to give my thoughts and opinions on the potential ordinance for panhandling. I want to take this perspective and talk about language and words and their meaning. If a business came to the council to ask for a tax break to start a business here, would you refer to that as panhandling? You might request the business that they submit a proposal for review and consideration, but in reality, the business is asking for your assistance. They are respectfully begging the council for your help, financial help. We have carefully crafted distinctions based on certain factors, along with language and words, to make asking for money respectable or businesslike. We frame the ask in words and phrases like incentives, loans, and tax breaks. But when we get right down to the basic transaction, it's an ask for help and assistance. It's an acceptable form of panhandling. This fall, politicians panhandled for money and votes. As a matter of fact, I received several panhandling telephone calls and flyers from many of you sitting in this room. And I certainly saw panhandling lawn signs asking for my vote. Using the term panhandling is, in this context, may not sit well, but the core of the transaction is the same. In many of our tax-exempt churches, they pass the basket for donations. It's a classic form of panhandling. In fact, this type of panhandling comes closer to fitting how the term panhandling originated. Once again, using the term panhandling in this context may make us uncomfortable, but it's the same form of asking for assistance. What is the difference? Is it perception or privilege? Why is a business request for a tax break, a church passing the collection basket, and a request for political donations and a vote types of panhandling any different from the person on the street corner making a request for help? Is it because we don't want to be confronted with the reality of poverty and homelessness because it makes us uncomfortable? Should we be more afraid of street panhandlers or business panhandlers? who take our money. Wasn't Kurt Schilling one of the most notorious panhandlers that ever panhandled in our state? Should it matter if you panhandle in the corridors of the State House or on a street corner? It's okay to panhandle if you're one of the haves, but it's not acceptable, and now we want to make it a crime if you're one of the have-nots asking for money. You might say that business panhandling is different because it might contribute to the community by hiring people. Fair enough. I believe that street panhandlers also contribute to my community. They contribute by reminding me how fortunate I am and how fragile life is. They help me not lose sight of the unfortunate in my community. We have a responsibility. I hope we can find other ways to work with this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually going to go out of order one. I have one member of the public here not to speak on the ordinance, so I'm going to allow him to speak. I know it's going to be short, and then we'll get him out of here. So John Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. My name is John Bolton, 22 McIntosh Drive, Cranston. I'm here in my capacity as an attorney with the law firm of Hinckley Allen, and as you mentioned, I'm not here speaking on behalf or against the panhandling ordinance. I am making reference to ordinance number 1-17-11, which I understand is before you this evening only to be referred to committee. It's not to be discussed this evening. But I did want to state for the record that this ordinance is being proposed without any prejudice or waiver to our position that the comprehensive plan as already exists supports land development approvals for renewable energy in the city, specifically in A80, M1, M2, and S1 zoning districts. We're proposing this ordinance at this time to allow the city to more efficiently dispose of certain appeals that are pending in Superior Court, which would then allow certain shovel-ready projects to proceed in the city, which will allow both the preservation of land and the generation of tax revenue. And unless you have any questions, those are the only comments I had on that ordinance, Mr. Council President.
Thank you, Attorney Bolton.
Mr. Council President, with your indulgence, I would, when I was looking at the agenda this evening, I noticed there was another ordinance, ordinance 1-17-02, which I quickly read, and it had to do with electronic filing of documents on applications. Certainly, clients that I represent in the city would have, I don't think, any problem complying with any of those requirements. I represent many developers. I would caution the council as they take up that ordinance to really examine the effect that they may have on small businesses. In my opinion, that could put an undue requirement on small businesses, both financially and time-wise, that may have small matters before the council. So I just wanted to make that comment as well.
Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you.
Kate Aubin.
Kate Aubin, 39 Moreland Ave, Cranston. I'm here tonight to speak against the proposed panhandling ordinance. This proposal is being touted as a public safety ordinance, but it does little to ensure public safety. What it actually does is criminalize both poverty and charity. The thought seems to be that if it becomes illegal to accept donations given from the driver's side of a vehicle to someone standing on a median or a lane divider, that panhandlers will stop panhandling. They won't. The majority of people who panhandle do so because they are struggling financially. If you make panhandling illegal in one location, it will just move to another location in the city. To truly solve the problem of panhandling, the city needs to ensure that the panhandlers, many of whom are homeless, are receiving the services they need. Many people will point to all of the organizations and services available, and it's true that there are those working to help homeless populations. But the city of Cranston needs to take a more active role in this area. I know Councilman Favicchio has done a lot of research into Harrington Hall and its residents, and that's great. But I'd like to see the entire council sit down with Crossroads, House of Hope, social workers, mental health professionals, and others who work with homeless community and try to understand what is working, where services are falling short, and what role the city can play to ensure that our most vulnerable populations aren't falling through the cracks. We need to work to solve the root causes of the problem, and the best way to start is to talk with the people who deal with it on a daily basis. If we as a city work to eradicate homelessness and poverty, we will see fewer and fewer people panhandling. The ACLU sent a letter to its members last week stating that they will likely be pursuing legal action against Cranston because of the unconstitutionality of the ordinance. This lawsuit will cost Cranston taxpayers and the city thousands of dollars, just like the last time a similar ordinance was tried in Cranston. That money could be better spent repairing our roads, continuing to improve our schools, or helping the most vulnerable members of our city. I urge you to not pass this ordinance. Take a step back and work to understand the root causes of the problem, to come up with a solution that is compassionate, sustainable, and makes Cranston a better place for all of its residents. The city of Cranston has the opportunity to be a leader like Salt Lake City, Utah, or Phoenix, Arizona, who have both essentially eliminated chronic homelessness with the Housing First model. Or we can be known as the city that is constantly fighting lawsuits that we inevitably lose. I hope you'll make the right choice.
George, I don't want to butcher your last name.
It's Sheetinger, and I'm at 173 Grand Ave in Cranston. I'm here to speak against the ordinance on panhandling. I apologize for using the word panhandling. The Cranston that I would like to live in is not one that takes punitive actions on the less fortunate among us. It is a Cranston that tries to find human solution to human needs. Rather than arresting these individuals, asking for help on the streets corners, why don't we assign a police officer to talk to these individuals and find out what they need? Then ask that officer to help these individuals find services that fit their needs to get them off the street. A much cheaper solution than arresting and re-arresting homeless people and these people asking for money on the street. We can ask the Cranston Chief of Police what it costs to book somebody, arrest them, and hold their things. I'm sure their personal possession. I'm sure it's thousands of dollars. That thousands of dollars had better be spent finding these people shelter and resources. It sounds like a much better long-term solution to help these individuals with their needs than short-sightedness of arresting and re-arresting. I'm sure the Cranston police would rather be part of a solution, and a less costly one than the cost of an arrest and re-arrest. If we don't deal with the underlying problems of these individuals, we are not solving anything by arresting them. The only thing we are doing by removing these individuals from the street is taking them out of our sight. Thank you for your time.
I'm going to go out of order again. I have a young woman with an infant here. We're going to let her speak so she can get the infant back to a better place.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Sarah.
Not an infant, just a very loud toddler. So hopefully if I can get her out of the way, it won't disturb the rest of the hearing. I appreciate it. Good morning, good evening, Council President Farina and council members. My name is Sarah Harrigan, and I'm a resident of 70 Ferncrest Ave. I'm also a volunteer with the Progressive Cranston Action Network, and I'm here to respectfully voice my strong dissent to Ordinance 12-1602. I have three concerns. I'll be as brief as possible. My first concern is that there's zero evidence that you're actually solving a public safety concern with this ordinance. I understand that there's definitely quite a few car accidents at the intersections that you listed in the ordinance. But is there any evidence that these car accidents are caused by panhandlers asking to receive food or money from the drivers? When I'm regularly commuting and stopped at any one of these intersections, I'm usually much more concerned about my fellow drivers blatantly ignoring traffic signals, blowing through red lights, or passing on my right to take a left-hand turn, which unfortunately happens fairly regularly. But I don't see any evidence at all that panhandlers are causing the accidents. My second concern is a financial one. The Supreme Court has overruled anti-panhandling laws, and this is an anti-panhandling law in sheep's clothing. There's no doubt that this ordinance will almost immediately be challenged, and that the city of Cranston will be tied up in an expensive legal battle over the constitutionality. And I'm concerned that our tax dollars could be going to better places. One second. And third, my final concern is philosophical. The ordinance is unquestionably criminalizing poor people. And honestly, if you think that our state, local, and national safety net is strong enough to support their complex needs, then I really recommend that folks spend some time with the agencies and the individuals in those agencies who are trying to provide these safety net services. I understand that people have concerns about panhandling. I'm not being a proponent of panhandling here. To be completely honest, I have also felt deeply uncomfortable when being approached directly for food or money. But by banishing the approach, it's the exact opposite of how we need to be handling these problems. As a community, we really need to acknowledge the poorest among us and work together to find better solutions. And far too many of us are just one pink slip or hospitalization away from being in this position ourselves. Thank you very much for your time and patience.
Debbie Flitman.
So, excuse me, once again, I'm here as a resident, and I would like to be able to read my testimony quickly. I'm here as a resident of Cranston, Debbie Flitman. I live at 52 Lindsay Lane in Cranston in Alpine Estates, and I'm here on behalf of myself as a resident, and also I'll be representing the ACLU, so I have 2 documents to read, and I'll keep at the 2 minutes. My testimony is as a Cranston resident. As some of you already know, I'm a resident that cares enough about Cranston to get involved in my community. As I stated at the Ordinance Committee the last time, I oppose this proposed ordinance. If this ordinance is passed, I'm very concerned about the City of Cranston spending tax money to fight a lawsuit that will undoubtedly be filed by the Rhode Island ACLU due to the fact that there are apparent constitutional First Amendment violations in the ordinance. As a matter of fact, as a taxpayer, I'm already concerned about the money paid to desisto law on the issue. When you took the oath for your elected position on the Cranston City Council, you promised that you would be true, faithful, and support the U.S. Constitution. I, for one, am going to hold you to that promise. Everything about the Constitution matters. You have stated that this is a safety ordinance, one that is being proposed to keep drivers, panhandlers, donation collectors safe. However, you have failed to provide any backup data that shows an increase in car accidents involving people asking for donations. Our tax money will be put to better use if the City of Cranston would increase resources for homeless, indigent, mentally ill, and school children who are often out there requesting donations. You may not realize, but if you pass this ordinance, many kids in Alpine Estates where I live will be extremely disappointed. The entrance to Alpine, which is also the exit, has a perfect median in the middle of the entrance where selling lemonade has been a summertime tradition for many of the kids growing up. When my kids were much younger, they often sat on chairs for hours in the median selling lemonade and cookies. One day they collected over $100, which they donated to the local animal shelter. Finally, I'd like to address Councilman Farina on this one with regards to his comment at the last meeting, at the ordinance meeting, when he stated that he has 65 comments from constituents on his Facebook wall, all in favor of this ordinance. I hardly think that your personal, private social media account presents an even playing field for all of your constituents. If you have a direct correspondence from someone, I'd say, well, that's okay, that's valid. But a private account, sorry, I can't say that's very fair. So as one of your constituents, I please ask you to oppose this proposed ordinance. Thank you. And now, Debbie Flitman from the ACLU. The testimony is very similar.
You went to 255 on the first. If you could try to, since it's very similar, if you could try to do another 2.
Okay.
I didn't bang you because I figured you would just do both at once and do 4 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will. Just go through this briefly because it's pretty much the same as just a little bit updated information from the last time I testified for the ACLU. And So what they have to say is that the proposed ordinance is designed as a substitute for the city's current ban on roadway solicitation, which the city has acknowledged is unconstitutional. However, this proposal is identical to the one that was brought before the City Council in October. And at that time, the ACLU wrote a letter to the council in which we stated that the proposal contained many, if not more, of First Amendment problems. So let's skip to further. If the, well, you listed a whole bunch of intersections which they wanted to address here. Further, even if these intersections did have a correlation with places where more solicitation takes place, which they do not, the proposed ordinance doesn't attempt to limit its reach to those particular intersections. Instead, the proposal prohibits the peaceful exercise of this particular First Amendment activity citywide. So you pretty much understand where the ACLU stands on this, and you won't be surprised if this does pass that they will go forward with a lawsuit, which I don't want to pay for. If you like, I have copies of my testimony and that of the ACLU.
Yeah, the clerk will get them for you, or the deputy clerk.
Who? Oh.
And when I let the young woman with the toddler speak, I neglected to call on Mr. Catone. So, Josh Catone.
My name is Josh Catone. I live at 39 Moreland Ave in Cranston. The administration and some members of this council keep making the claim that this is a public safety issue, but no one has been able to provide any evidence that panhandling has ever caused an accident. The preamble to the proposed ordinance provides a list of busy intersections in Cranston and how many traffic accidents have happened at each, but makes no mention of the causes of any of those accidents, how many of those accidents occurred because of road rage, how many because of alcohol, or because of mobile phone use or inclement weather. And the point is that lots of things cause accidents, and there's been no evidence offered that panhandling is one of them. So it seems like this ordinance, if it is indeed about public safety, is based on a feeling that panhandling might be dangerous for motorists. And I don't believe you should legislate away our rights based on something you guess maybe could be happening. A lot of things might be dangerous for drivers. Drinking hot coffee while driving might be dangerous, so let's have an ordinance that outlaws Dunkin' Donuts drive-through lanes. Having a bee in your car might be dangerous while driving, so I'll propose an ordinance that requires people keep their car windows closed in summer. Reading political lawn signs while driving, might cause a distraction and be dangerous, so let's have an ordinance that makes it illegal to place lawn signs in sight of passing motorists. Obviously, each of those things is absurd, but so clearly is this ordinance. I also just want to say quickly that because the ACLU has already indicated that they're likely going to challenge this ordinance in court, because similar ordinances have already been found unconstitutional by the courts, like in Portland, Maine, and because at least one constitutional lawyer has already testified before this committee, or rather before the ordinance committee, to that conclusion, it's extremely likely that if passed, this ordinance won't survive a legal challenge and will end up costing the city of Cranston tens of thousands of dollars in taxpayer money. The official Rhode Island State Republican Party platform on their website says, and I quote, "Government at all levels must exercise fiscal responsibility. Passing this ordinance would be fiscally irresponsible," and I just want you all to know that we won't forget that.
My name is Mary Curtin. I live at 23 Davis Avenue in Eden Park, and I'm here to speak on the panhandling ordinance. We have people on the streets in Cranston asking for our help, and the question is, how do we deal with this? Voting for this ordinance says that we will deal with it by spending money on a legal battle over the constitutionality of the ordinance. There is another way to go, and another way for the City Council as our representatives to approach this issue. We can look at the issue of people needing help, and we can focus our attention and our resources on taking some steps to alleviate the need. I would suggest that there are 3 areas that the City Council could think about focusing on. One would be to create more safe and affordable housing in the City of Cranston. Another would be to ensure that we have both educational and recreational programs for our youth that will give them a better future. And lastly, I would suggest that we need look no further away than the City of Central Falls for an example of a city that has decided to work on a coordinated health plan for all of its residents based on the community health center model. We have community health center here in Cranston. This is a comprehensive medical care plan that includes behavioral and substance abuse services, and it would behoove our community to try to access better healthcare services for all of our residents. We have the ability to build toward a future in which the need for the requests for help on our streets are reduced. We can be better than this ordinance. Please vote it down. Thank you.
Dana Holmgren.
Good evening. My name is Dana Holmgren. I live at 161 Ferncrest Avenue. I would like to speak on the panhandling ordinance. I would like to address several things. None of the proponents of this legislation have spoken yet this evening, but there were several objections that were raised in the ordinance committee meeting that I would like to address in case they do come up tonight. So there were complaints about Harrington Hall, there were complaints about sex offenders, and there were complaints about violence. I would like the council people to remember that violence is already against the law and that other complaints that have been brought up are better brought up in another setting and are not relevant to the issue we're discussing here tonight. I'm completely flabbergasted that the city council members are considering spending tax dollars on something that they know is going to be fought in court. Mayor Fung, I voted for you several years ago, and I'm just flabbergasted that this ordinance is being brought up again in spite of the fact that it's been shot down previously. I also looked carefully at the intersections that were on the list in the proposed ordinance. So there are 21 intersections that are listed. 19 of those are, let me backtrack a moment. 2 of those are double listed. So it's listed as Park and Elmwood, and it's listed again as Elmwood and Park. So we're talking about 19 intersections. Just off the top of my head, I can look at those intersections, and 10 of them I have never once in all my time driving in Cranston seen panhandling. So more than half of the intersections that are listed in your documentation, so to speak, for this being a public safety issue, are not even intersections where panhandling occurs. I'm going to skip through some of my other points because they've been raised already, but I would also like to point out that the so-called Facebook poll that occurred, that was mentioned in the ordinance committee, Councilman Farina, was that you, I believe? So somebody, one of the council people talked about a Facebook poll of constituents. That very evening I went home, it was you, Councilman Farina, I remember now, thank you. I friend requested you and you did not accept my friend request. So I would like to point out that that's not an objective poll, and any kind of poll of that matter needs to be discounted. What we're talking about is an issue that probably makes all of us just a little bit uncomfortable. And I don't think we can legislate. I don't think we can talk about unconstitutional ordinances for things that make us uncomfortable. If we want to talk about how women who are in their soccer vans who are uncomfortable with people panhandling, we can talk about empowerment workshops for those women. Thank you.
For the record, this is public comment. I'm not allowed to answer questions directed at the council nor any other councilman. But yes, I did have a Facebook mention in the last meeting. Leanne Brine. I'm assuming you're not a Cranston resident, but since you are with the RA Coalition for Homeless.
Thank you.
2 minutes, please.
My name is Leanne Byrne. I work at the Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless, which is located in Pawtucket, but is a statewide organization working for a comprehensive solution to end homelessness in our state. We've had folks at ordinance committee hearings along the way discussing this issue, and I just want to reiterate quickly that we're disappointed that municipalities like Cranston are going against Rhode Island's history of opposing discrimination of people based on their housing status. We were leaders in passing a homeless bill of rights here in our state, and our country has looked to us as a model. I also want to say that criminalizing panhandling and visible displays of poverty create additional barriers to access to much needed social services for people who are arrested. Additionally, criminal records create a barrier for our service providers to place people who are experiencing homelessness into housing. Since we started our work trying to end homelessness through the Zero 2016 campaign in early January of 2015, we've been able to house over 845 individuals. That is incredible work and done with extreme pride, but it also requires intensive service intervention, intensive engagement of folks. We want you to know that our providers are reaching out to the constituents panhandling in Cranston and statewide every day. But ordinances like this, laws like this that push our constituents into the margins and prevent them from getting the services they need are exactly the part of the problem that our providers are trying to overcome. So we ask you to let us continue to do our work, support us in our work, and vote this ordinance down. Thank you.
Michael Arroyo.
I'm Michael Arroyo. I am a resident of Cranston. I live at 53 Circuit Drive in Edgewood. I'm also the executive director of Rhode Island Jobs with Justice and a member of the Rhode Island AFL-CIO Executive Committee. I am here, and seeing old high school teachers is also a wonderful thing. I'm here in opposition to the anti-panhandling ordinance. I believe that the motivation for it is, besides being unconstitutional and unfair, it criminalizes people who barely can afford to live as it is and makes an environment that is both cruel and deeply wounding to people who have so few options as it is. There are factual problems with the idea that this is causing traffic problems at intersections. Intersections intersect by nature, and there are accidents at intersections. Unless you can demonstrably prove that it is panhandling that is causing these problems, then I would say your data is kind of flawed, and this is a kind of a red herring. The other issue that I have with it as a director of a labor organization is that we need to be able to reach citizens in public places publicly. Access to shared space is at a premium. Going to a supermarket parking lot, which is private property, is not necessarily an option if you're objecting to the behavior of that employer or if the landlord has a policy that objects to that. Public space is not only our basic shared resource, it is also our basic right to assemble becomes threatened. For a striker to reach out to a passing motorist to explain the situation that they're having is real, and they need to have access to that. For a fundraiser, like I did years ago as a student, to raise money for a sports team is a real thing, and to deny access to that is to deny us the right to speak. This is an unconstitutional ordinance that just invites an aggressive response from the legal community and also invites an attitude that criminalizes poverty. This is not something that we can afford in this current climate, and I really urge the council to reject this ordinance. Thank you.
Karen Rosenberg.
Good evening. My name is Karen Rosenberg, and I am a resident of 46 Bow Street. I've been a Cranston homeowner and a taxpayer for 20 years. I'm here tonight to express my strong opposition to this ordinance against panhandling that's going to be voted on this evening. I attended the meeting of the Ordinance Committee a couple weeks ago, and I heard Roger Williams, law professor and ACLU cooperating attorney Andrew Horowitz explain that the ordinance is unconstitutional and that the ACLU will challenge it if it's adopted. The response from the city's attorney was frankly unimpressive. The city is not well served by lawyers who tell counselors what they want to hear instead of providing sound legal advice. It should be clear that the ordinance is unconstitutional because it seeks to regulate free speech without being narrowly tailored to meet a compelling state interest. Public safety, the compelling state interest proponents claim, is bogus. No reasonable judge would accept that the targeted speech is the cause of traffic accidents when the city has not conducted any study or produced any actual evidence that a single traffic accident has been caused by the targeted activity. The claims of the ordinance proponents notwithstanding, the targeted activity is obviously panhandling, and the real reason it is being targeted is not accident prevention. It is the fact that some in Cranston are made uncomfortable by the sight of panhandlers. It was obvious from the testimony of supporters at the committee meeting that many are driven by fallacies like the one that only panhandlers will be affected by this ordinance, that most panhandlers are sex offenders, and/or that most sex offenders are homeless panhandlers, so that they seem convinced that this ordinance is going to protect us from sex offenders. Of course, all of that is absurd. Panhandlers are people who have resorted to a very difficult way of making money. They come from all walks. In fact, many panhandlers seem to be veterans. Many are people struggling with homelessness, addiction, or mental illness. Furthermore, this ordinance is written does not just affect panhandlers, it also affects groups, it also affects school groups, sports teams, and others who raise money for charitable causes by soliciting motorists. It would also ban someone from handing leaflets or selling newspapers to motorists stopped at intersections. These are all protected speech. I'm not reassured by the unspoken suggestion that the ordinance will be discriminatorily applied and that all the free speech that we like will be left alone, while only the free speech we dislike will be suppressed. So here's why I object to this ordinance. First, I do not want my city government in my name trashing the Bill of Rights. I heard Councilor Farina say at the Ordinance Committee meeting that he feels justified in his support of the ordinance because constituents have spoken on his Facebook page in favor of it. Well, here's the inconvenient truth. Constitutionality is not decided by popularity contests or polls. Oftentimes, unpopular speech is speech that we most need to protect. Frankly, if the councilman's Facebook friends were asked a more honest question, such as, are you in favor of the city violating the First Amendment of the Constitution and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in a losing effort to defend the city's actions, the result might be different. Second, as a Cranston taxpayer, I object to the use of tax dollars.
You've gone on 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I've allowed you to continue, so can you please wrap it up?
I'm almost finished. I object to the use of tax dollars to defend unconstitutional laws. If the Constitution means anything, the city will lose in court and waste substantial amounts of money that could be used for better things, like funding services for our kids or our seniors, paying for infrastructure improvements, or paying the company that employs our school cafeteria workers better so that they can pay a living wage and give health benefits to their employees. The ordinance is a gross misuse of city resources. Third, I asked at the last council meeting.
Miss, you've gone on for 4 minutes and 10 seconds. I want to give everybody the opportunity to speak. Could you please wrap it up?
I think I'm the last person on the list, but.
No, there's actually 7 or 8 more.
Okay, I have just a few more points to make. I asked how the ordinance would be enforced after the meeting, and a councilman said he didn't know. I think it's important for us to hear the answer, but on the face, both the pedestrian and the motorist who engage in the protected...
I'm going to have to ask you to sit down. You've exceeded 4 minutes and 30 seconds, double the allotted time I give every other person.
Thank you.
Jonathan Thomas.
Hello, good evening. Before I
So I've been in the hospital this past week with a heart condition. I just want to say, being homeless can happen to any one of us. I want to become a productive member of society. I don't want to be out there every day holding up a sign. I feel humiliated, and I'm in a situation right now where I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm in a hole and I can't dig myself out. By holding up my sign, it gives me an opportunity to receive job opportunities, to put myself out there and maybe earn a couple dollars to put towards my apartment that I'm saving for. I feel it's very important. I mean, I'm not out there trying to scam anyone or trying to get over on anyone. I'm just trying to make people understand where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Dennis Bunker.
Hello, City Council, everybody. I'm Dennis Bunker. I'm currently homeless. I'm actually a college graduate. I went to Syracuse 2 years, played baseball, got hurt, went to Connecticut School of Broadcasting, studied communications. And then my father passed away 2 days after I graduated college. And he was in the military 30 years. And depression, I had PTSD. There's other things that come involved. And I've been struggling ever since to get my mind, everything back to work. So my mother just moved to Florida. I was staying with her. And at the time, I can't move with her. I don't have the funds to move with her. So, I mean, coming up here is kind of embarrassing because I am a homeless person. And like, I humble myself every day. First time I ever, they call it flying a sign. First time I ever did it, I worked in a lot of restaurants in Rhode Island. I know a lot of people. My dad knows a lot of people. I put the sign down, and I was so embarrassed to do it. I put my head up, and every time I stand there and I put my head down, so humiliated. And it's not fun. It's not like, you know what I'm saying, like a raffle to try to like, you know what I'm saying, something. It's something for myself. I don't use drugs. I don't use alcohol, and I'm just in a spot where I'm on 3 different housing lists. I just got my ID, birth certificate, Social Security. I'm trying to get my life back together. And slowly but surely, I stay at Harrington Hall also, and I'm not a sex offender. And half of them are, but I'm not one of them. I'm one of the ones that are actually trying. And like you said, homelessness can happen to anybody. Like I said, I was a college graduate, played 4 sports at East Providence High School, and like, things happen, you know, in life. You wouldn't, in my life, I wouldn't see this happening, you know, and my family passed away, this and that, and I'm stuck here. And when I panhandle, it's like a little bit of money, just, you know what I'm saying? Like, even to go get a coffee in the morning, it's something small and simple, even to just get a meal, you know, buy myself a shirt. I was wearing the same clothes for 2 weeks straight, and I broke down and cried, and they helped me out, and the shelter that I'm staying gave me a new pair of clothes. And like I said, that's humbling in itself, and it just makes you so embarrassed just to be in the situation that you're in. So, I mean, to get rid of this, I mean, it's basically everything. I mean, it's not all I have. I'm trying. Like I said, there's thousands of people that are homeless. So I'm on a housing list, 3 of them. I'm like 1 out of 5,000, and who knows when that's going to happen. But I'm going to keep pursuing, doing what I'm doing, and hopefully vote against it. Thank you.
Susan Hogan. Susan Hogan.
Hi, my name is Susan Hodgen. I live at 108 Betsy Williams Drive in Cranston. Thank you for listening to us. I'm concerned about the disingenuous nature of this ordinance that says its concern is public safety, but really seems rooted in how uncomfortable panhandling makes people of privilege feel. Mayor Fung mingled with the rich and the elite at President Trump's inaugural ball in Washington last Friday, but has turned his back on the poor and struggling people here in Cranston. So I have two questions. Whose mayor are you? And does the City Council represent everyone in Cranston, including those who need our help? Thank you.
Jane Testa Young.
Hello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you guys again. I was here last week. I represent the Muscular Dystrophy Association. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the partnership that the Muscular Dystrophy Association has with the International Association of Firefighters. So I'm just here tonight to reiterate the importance of the Cranston Fire Department's Fill the Boot campaign and the detrimental effects that the proposed ordinance will have on the MDA and the families in the city of Cranston. Annually, the City of Cranston Department raises over $10,000 for MDA. MDA needs these funds to help our families that live in this city, take advantage of all MDA services for no cost to them. We're able to do this for Cranston families because of the boot drives. We have successful amendments to ordinance like this one that is proposed tonight across the country that allow firefighters to safely conduct Fill the Boot drives. We feel strongly that the firefighters should be exempt if this is passed from this, as they are trained public safety professionals. They follow safety plans. We have an MDA insurance policy that covers every firefighter. On behalf of the MDA and those we serve here in Cranston, we ask that you allow the firefighters to continue their dedication to the MDA Fill the Boot drive. Last week, I gave you some sample ordinance amendments, and I'm more than happy to send those over to you again. And I just hope that you take that into consideration tonight. Thank you.
Paul Valletta.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Welcome to the new council members. It's quite your first meeting, but it's an important one. The representative from MDA just spoke, and we're very fortunate in the city. We only go out a couple of Saturdays for a few hours, and through the generosity of the citizens of Cranston, we raise $10,000 to $12,000, and that's through the citizens that live here and the people that go through our city. But there's also a bigger issue here, not just the MDA, and I speak as the union president for this issue. This is unconstitutional. And there's been several meetings when I didn't get up and speak. I was asked by my international to get up here and speak tonight, and my state organization. But there is an unconstitutional, this is unconstitutional. I mean, it's been adjudicated all over the country. And I understand, I'm gonna believe everybody that says they're doing this for a safety reason, because none of you have ever lied to me before. So I believe this is a safety issue if the council, some council people and the mayor thinks it is. But we have to find a different, if you really believe it's a safety issue, then we have to find a different mechanism, because this is unconstitutional. I've listened to people before, smarter than me, that have talked about this. There was a professor that came up here, and my mother always taught me, if you don't know about a subject, listen to people that do. And this gentleman, told us why it was unconstitutional. I did some work over the weekend, knowing that I would come before you to speak. They just had a case in Lowell, Mass. And almost every circuit appeal in the country has shot down these laws. I won't bore you with all the circuit appeal cases that I found, but they've all shot these down. And Lowell, Mass just lost that in the First Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers Rhode Island, so that's where we would be if we were someone were to adjudicate this. But something struck me, and I'm one of those raging left-wing liberals, but something struck me that was was said in that Circuit Court of Appeal, and actually one of the clergymen said it at the last ordinance meeting. You can't pass a law that stops one citizen of this country from asking another citizen for help. And that's what we're doing here. And that just, I mean, it got to me. It kind of made me emotional, actually. It got to me. That's what we're doing here. I grew up here, I lived here, raised my girls here, they went to Cranston schools here. This is not a Cranston ordinance. We don't do these things in Cranston. We take care of people. And I'll wrap it up, Mr. President. The last thing I'll say is, as the union president, I don't want to spend money. Now listen, if you guys and the mayor always governed by how you're threatened to be sued, nothing would ever get done, because you're always threatened to get sued. I understand that, and you have to govern. But this is so obvious that this is unconstitutional. It's so obvious. There's cases all over the country. Let's not spend hard-earned dollars to fight something that we can't possibly win. We cannot win this. So I think if we could all get together, I think we could come up with something, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, that concludes my sign-up sheet. Are there any other Cranston residents who would like to speak? So if you're a Cranston resident, come up, name, address, 2 minutes. If it's already been said, try to keep your comments as brief as possible.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Lewis. I live at 185 Bluff Avenue, number 3. And I have come here to echo much of what's been said. I would prefer not to pay for a lawsuit with the ACLU over this issue because I would be paying for it twice, once voluntarily and once involuntarily. You say that panhandling causes accidents. You have no evidence to support this claim. You say that panhandlers in Cranston are sex offenders and therefore a threat to public safety. I'm pleasantly surprised that certain representatives of a certain political party here are concerned about this issue. You've no good evidence to support the claim that the people doing the panhandling are sex offenders. Sex offenders and poor people are two different groups, and I hope none of you would be surprised to learn that they don't entirely overlap. This proposed law demonstrates a shameful lack of compassion for the most vulnerable members of our society. Given the inaccessibility of good public transportation, mental and physical health care, and other services essential for many to find and keep gainful employment, it seems incredibly cruel that you would deny marginalized people one of the very few methods they have to sustain themselves. It also concerns me that it seems you've proposed this law without giving any thought to its enforcement. You catch a kind person giving 50 cents to a panhandler, maybe homeless, maybe disabled, maybe a veteran, maybe all three. Who are you going to punish? If you punish the person receiving the money, yeah, you're criminalizing poverty. And a lot of people have said this before. If you punish the person giving the money, you're criminalizing compassion. Which is it? Thank you.
Good evening, Alan Davis, 165 Oaklawn Avenue, Cranston. I'm a retired police officer, and I was in the traffic division for better than 10 years. And as far as the ordinance goes, I'm also of the opinion it's a dead loser on any type of court challenge. The need for a statute here is, there is no need. It's already been written out for you. You're not looking in the right places. You won't find the term panhandling anywhere in NHTSA, USDOT, Federal Highway Administration. You will not find that term anywhere. What you will find is the term pedestrian, because that's what these folks are. They are pedestrians standing along the side of the road. What they're doing, I don't really care. they are in a certain amount of danger depending on their position in the road. For the folks that don't know me, I was the fatal accident investigator in this town for a long time. I can count 5 of our homeless people in Cranston in my term in the Cranston division that I picked their bodies up off the road for crossing Pontiac Avenue, crossing New London Avenue, and in that general area back when the shelter was, before the shelter was torn down over there. While panhandling is not going to be regulated, pedestrians are, in a book called the MUTCD, Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. The term pedestrian refuge is what you want to look at for the folks that are standing in the middle of the road out on the islands. A pedestrian refuge by definition is 4 to 6 feet wide and ADA accessible. Now, as dumb as this is going to sound, you're going to have a homeless person or a panhandler, pedestrian, say, I want to stand out in the middle of the street too because those folks get more donations than I get, but because that particular median isn't ADA accessible, now does that man have the ability to force the town or the state to make that portion of the road ADA accessible when it's not designed for pedestrians to begin with? You don't need an ordinance. You don't need anything else other than to enforce the MUTCD requirements for pedestrians and where they can be. Certain highways are marked no pedestrians at all. Those highways include certain ramps. It's not in any way, shape, or form targeting any one particular group. It's targeting the pedestrians standing in a place where they're going to get themselves hurt. I strongly encourage to have the PE for this town, whoever that is at the moment, do the research before you decide to enact anything. Save yourselves the trouble. Thank you very much.
Name and address to the record, please.
My name is Tom Flynn. I live at 101 Villa Avenue, Cranston. And the reason why I'm here tonight is because I'm looking for permission to leave my car on the street since I do not have parking.
Councilman Stichels? This is public speaking. It's not on the docket.
Right. It's being introduced tonight, but the hearing will be in February.
Okay, but I was told that it was going to be brought up tonight.
Well, make your statement, and we'll hear it, and then when we hear it again
like I say, what I'm looking for is to have permission to park on 101 Villa Avenue since I do not have a driveway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
My name is John Donegan, 196 Knollwood Avenue, Cranston. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just want to talk on, quickly make a statement on the panhandling ordinance. When you go to take this vote, I ask, you ask yourselves, what message do you want to send to your constituents, to the residents of Cranston, to the people of Rhode Island, to the people across the country who, if you do pass this, they'll learn about it when it's in other case studies and in other media write-ups about another ordinance as such that's been struck down. What message do you want to send? Do you want to send the message that we're a city that turns its back on the needy, the homeless, and the most vulnerable of our community? I know that's not what Cranston stands for. I know that's not what all these people stand for, and I hope that's not what you stand for.
Any other Cranston residents before I close public comment? Public comment is closed. Okay, we're going to quickly fly through some of the business. There are no resolutions tonight. Report of committees, Safety Services and Licensing. Council Majority Leader Paplowskis.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. We have on Safety Services and Licensing Committee, Red Lounge, 355 Dyer Avenue. I recommend that this be referred back to committee. I know they've had some meetings with the police department. I'd like to move that on back to committee.
I'll second that.
I have the form of motion to move Red Lounge back to committee. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that concludes the business from Safety Services for this month. Council Vice President Favecchio, Finance.
Thank you, Chairman. The Finance Committee met and we made the following recommendations. First, with regard to real estate tax abatements. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor? We're going to take a vote, right?
Thank you, Council Vice President.
Yeah.
Clerk, please take the roll.
The committee meeting.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Next, we have the motor vehicle tax abatements. The vote was to approve these. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Next, we have the intangible tax abatements that was approved by the committee and recommended for full passage.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Under discussion, there being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Next, we had the tax interest waivers. There's a list there if anyone needs to review it. It was recommended by the committee that these be approved.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Under discussion, there being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And lastly, we had the tax waiver denials. There's a list there if anyone needs to read them. The committee voted to approve these denials.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Under discussion, there being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That concludes the business of the Finance Committee. Before we get to the Ordinance Committee, the mayor is here to speak on the ordinance we will be hearing while we are going through the Ordinance Committee, the solicitation ordinance. So, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Council. Thank you so much, Council President and members of the City Council. I know that Colonel Winquist also had requested an opportunity to speak on this ordinance 1216-02 as well. I know that Ms. Zanni is currently passing out some photographs which will be part of my testimony as well. But tonight I'm here to speak in support of this ordinance. Now, I understand the council members had heard testimony not only at the Ordinance Committee from many members of the public, both in support and in opposition, as well as individuals that are here tonight testifying in opposition. But what I do know is that after thoughtful consideration of those concerns that were expressed previously, particularly with respect to some of the legal issues, it's my understanding that I know that Mr. Kirschenbaum, the council's city attorney, worked with our outside counsel, Mr. DeSisto, to further strengthen the ordinance so that it would address many of the prior questions that had been raised. So I stand here tonight in support of those forthcoming amendments and would urge passage of the amended ordinance at the appropriate time after the appropriate publication of the amended ordinance, provided that the council passes those amendments. But I want to take a step back because this is an issue that I've worked on from day one. when we were first sued by the ACLU well over a year ago for the original ordinance that even we agreed as a city was overly broad. But one of the things I want to clarify tonight, because unfortunately I didn't have an opportunity to come before the ordinance subcommittee, is this misconception that's been put out there and falsely spread that this ordinance is only about one thing, and that's homelessness. And that is absolutely not true. We've worked diligently and examined different approaches from across the country, and even reviewing that First Circuit case, and designed an ordinance that would protect the health and safety of not only the drivers and occupants of motor vehicles, but also all residents, visitors, and pedestrians on and in our city roadways. This ordinance was designed with, first and foremost, public safety in mind, with the goal of preventing and reducing the incidence of distracted driving caused by vehicle occupants seeking to receive and/or pass any item from a vehicle to a pedestrian in the roadway, and also from a pedestrian in the roadway to receive and/or pass items to a vehicle occupant. And if you take a look at the data that we have presented to you in the past testimony as well as current testimony from many individuals, and particularly the photographs which I handed to you of an incident that I personally encountered back on December 19, 2016, you will see that this ordinance is designed to protect people from getting injured and having accidents in our already busy roadways, medians, and intersections. There are numerous examples of intersections throughout the city that have a high number of vehicle collisions or even single car accidents for the time period between January 1st, 2016 up to and including December 12th, 2016. You all have that data. And I want to address one of the prior speakers, I think it was Ms. Holmgren, Susan Holmgren, for bringing to my attention and everyone's attention and proving the points that some of those intersections that are listed, and was a representative sample in that legislative intent, didn't include intersections where panhandlers are present. Because this ordinance wasn't designed with panhandling for, and attacking homeless or attacking any specific people. That exactly proved my point. It shows what those data points were driven to show is the busy intersections that we have, the dangers that lurk in intersections, the collisions that happen at these intersections, and the potential dangers that could happen to individuals that go into our roadways. And I want to also address one of the points that she had mentioned about Elmwood Avenue, and it seemed as if it was duplicative. Well, it's not duplicative. When you take a look at the data, Elmwood Avenue and say, I think it was Park Avenue was one, but it's listed on two different occasions with two different data points about the number of accidents. Well, that is designed because of the direction of the vehicle that is traveling. So it's not duplicative. It is different, same intersection, but different lanes of travel, and that's how our data is recorded from our police department. But I also want to mention and thank Officer Davis for coming up. While he was testifying in opposition of it, he actually also further proved my point. We weren't trying to design to show a cause and effect between one versus the other, because that's not the point. But he did raise a very valid point, because we did not find any instances, at least within the data that we had over the past year, about fatalities. But thank you for pointing out the 5 fatalities that have happened on these intersections and roadways. That's further proof that they're about the dangers that happen. But also the second point about the medians. The medians that you talked about in the motor vehicles and the laws that are already in effect on a state road show that there are already restrictions from the state with respect to motor vehicle traffic, to pedestrians going to roadways, and that's one of the amendments that are going to be brought up before you tonight. But I want to focus on one of the busy intersections, and that's Park Avenue and Reservoir Avenue. Here, I've personally had 2 separate incidents with individuals in the roadways that have distracted myself. On one occasion in November of 2016, I was traveling northbound heading towards Providence in the middle lane of Reservoir Avenue heading towards City Hall and stopped at an intersection on Park Avenue waiting on a red light. And out of the blue, I was startled by a loud banging on my passenger window. A male with a large bucket in his hand was using it to bang on my window to get my attention to collect for whatever organization he was part of. I had no idea where he came from, and I was in the middle lane of that road. Fortunately, even though I was startled, I kept my foot on the brake. But what if I didn't? What if it was enough that it caused my vehicle to lurch forward or lurch in a particular direction because of the startling that happened? Believe me, you might be sitting there laughing. I see some of you laughing. I've been in a situation where I've taken a life. You can laugh all you want, sir, but that is something that I live with every single day. I don't ever want that to happen to anyone. So please take my testimony seriously. But on a separate occasion, and this is the photos that are before you on December 19, 2016. I was traveling this time southbound on Reservoir Avenue, again near the Park Avenue intersection, and in the middle lane. And the series of 4 photos that are before you tonight shows the inherent danger of what transpired and potential tragedy that this ordinance is designed to prevent. Photo 1, and they're marked on the back, there should be in sequential order, but photo 1 shows a male in an orange vest and a Santa hat soliciting in the middle of the roadway, walking northbound on Reservoir Avenue, trying to get the attention of drivers. Again, he is in the middle of a busy roadway. But if you see from the light is turning green at that moment. If you move to the second photo, this was just taken immediately after that same individual had gotten something, I couldn't tell what it was, from one of the vehicles in that middle lane, and he finally noticed that the light was turning green. But if you see in that second photo, all of the cars that were in front of me had already taken their foot off the brakes and were starting to drive southbound. And if you then take a look at photo number 3, and this is the dangerousness that I'm talking about. In photo number 3, that same male, noticing the traffic really moving, suddenly darts in front of a silver sedan, which, if you notice in that right travel lane, immediately adjacent to the sidewalk, is the one that's braking. He jammed on his brake, and fortunately, he didn't hit this individual. And photo 4 shows that individual finally getting to the sidewalk. These are the dangers that I'm actively talking about. And these photos fairly and accurately and truly represent what I saw on that day and what I'm trying to prevent. Because God help me, I don't want anyone to go through what I've been living through for all my life. And I know that I, along with some members of the council, have not only witnessed situations like this, but heard from other numerous constituents about many other dangerous situations on our roadways. This ordinance is simply a tool designed to prevent dangerous conditions in many busy roadways and intersections that are exacerbated by the presence of pedestrians that are engaging in acts that promote distracted driving. And I've heard many of you talk about, yes, there are other dangers that are out there, other dangers that our legislature are also trying to stop. Because when you talk about vehicles, these are dangerous things that we have to be very careful and pay careful attention. And any type of distraction can lead to dangerous situations. And this ordinance is in no way designed to restrict speech, target any specific form of solicitation, or any specific person or group. Because what it does mean is, yes, and I heard from the MDA and I heard from President Valletta, because it addresses not only panhandlers, but the firefighters raising money for the Fill the Boot campaign, student athletes collecting for uniforms, worshipers in support of their religious organizations, every single one of these groups that are out there. Under this ordinance, this activity can still be done, but in safe areas, and most importantly, away from moving vehicles. All along, my goal has been to make sure that everyone in Cranston is safe, whether they're in a car or on foot. This ordinance and the forthcoming amendments was drafted with the Constitution in mind, and that's why we took into consideration everything that even the ACLU said. And I'm confident that we will withstand a legal challenge. You know, I want to take a moment to thank all the members of the council. This isn't an easy decision. And for many of you, this is your first meeting, but it's a weighty one, it's an important one, and I urge you to pass this amended version when it comes up of 12-1602, because I believe personally that it is the right thing to do, and it provides a safe way for individuals to still get their message out and do what's needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we hear about the ordinance, Colonel, would you like to read your statement? Thank you, Colonel.
As the mayor pointed out, my #1 objective is public safety in this city, and I am in support of this ordinance, and I'll explain why. Since we stopped enforcing this ordinance back in April, complaints have been coming in left and right to the police department. There are a lot of people out there that are in opposition of panhandling in our streets. Actually, the number of complaints have increased since we stopped enforcing the ordinance. And I can tell you the calls coming into dispatch or in detail are different than what you might think are occurring out on our streets. There's aggressive solicitation going on at many intersections across the city. What I mean by that is individuals standing in the roadway, not on the median, not on the sidewalk, but in the roadway, to include yelling and swearing at motorists, banging our car windows, as the mayor had mentioned, blocking and impeding the path of traffic, trash left behind by those soliciting, physical confrontations between persons attempting to solicit for money at the same intersection, essentially fighting for the most lucrative locations. Obscene and sexual gestures made towards motorists as they pass if they don't give any money. We had an arrest for obtaining money under false pretenses for a person that was collecting for a charity that did not exist. Throwing of objects at passing traffic. Persons believed to be intoxicated or under the influence of drugs approaching motorists. Doesn't get more dangerous than that, somebody under influence stepping in the roadway. Medical events where persons soliciting for motorists had passed out on the side of the roadway. A person soliciting for money seen smoking drugs out of a bottle. Individuals soliciting money running in and out of traffic. So it's just a microcosm of some of the stuff that we're dealing with as a result of some of the activity that's taking place at these intersections. Most persons soliciting motorists for money do so at the major intersections. I think those are the ones that are listed in the ordinance. Due to the high volume of traffic, obviously wherever the high volume of traffic is, that's where you can make the most money. Unfortunately, those are the most dangerous intersections where we're seeing this activity. In 2016, our police department investigated 2,179 accidents at intersections alone. So you have a list of the most busy intersections, but we had 2,179 accidents at intersections across the city. In 328 of these accidents, roughly 10%, the vehicle or vehicles involved left the roadway in these collisions and struck a secondary object, such as a pole, guardrail, traffic control box, and in some instances, a pedestrian. That's exactly what we're trying to avoid by removing these people out of these dangerous intersections. Standing on a median or in the roadway is inherently dangerous. I don't know how anybody could refute that. Based on the law of averages, a person standing on a median or in the roadway collecting money for an extended period of time has an increased probability of eventually being struck by a vehicle. The longer you're out there and the volume of traffic and looking at statistics, we don't want to wait till we're handling a fatality. Just because we haven't had one is not not the time to sit back and not have an ordinance to protect these people that are out there. There is no question that a person holding up a sign and standing in a busy intersection poses a significant distraction to passing motorists. We all know that distracted driving is not only dangerous for the operator, but even more so for the person standing in or close proximity of a roadway unprotected. Furthermore, persons standing in the roadway collecting money at the traffic signal when it turns green also disrupts the efficient flow of traffic through these very, very busy intersections, often causing frustration to other motorists. So we do receive a lot of calls on this on a daily basis. Based on my 26 years of law enforcement experience, to include, unfortunately, investigating many accidents involving pedestrians, as well as the information I presented here tonight, I believe passing the ordinance is in the best interest of public safety. The ordinance would be enforced uniformly and without bias, regardless of who is collecting the money and for what purpose. And I heard before that there's some type of premise that we'll be arresting people by enforcing this ordinance. That couldn't be furthest from the truth. The person will receive a civil citation, just like a traffic citation or a seatbelt violation. So no one's getting arrested. There's no resources being used to book people and put people behind bars. That's not the intent of this particular ordinance. As the mayor said, if we can divert these people to a safe area, I would be for that. Nobody wants to stop these people from getting some assistance. And that's the bottom line. So I've been out there. I've spoken to many of the people out there that are out there collecting money. I have empathy and sympathy for their situations, but there has to be a better way than them standing in a busy intersection. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Ordinance Committee, Council Majority Leader Paplowskis.
Thank you, Council President. Before us, we have 12-1602, Ordinance Amendment of Code 10-40-070, the Code of City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Solicitation on Roadways, prohibited. Referred from Ordinance Committee and with a recommendation of passage.
You have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. I have a second. I have a motion to approve and a second. Under discussion. Councilman Favicchio.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to make a couple of amendments to this. After careful review and consultation with our legal counsel, I think these following amendments will help, and this will go back to Ordinance Committee. And before I do, I just wanted to make one comment, if I may, a point of personal privilege. I know that there was quite a bit of discussion about spending taxpayer dollars on ACLU lawsuits, and I just wanted to remind the public that first of all, we can't do everything the ACLU tells us to do, otherwise it become a branch of government. But Ms. Flitman was the plaintiff in the redistricting lawsuit, which went to the courts, and the city won. And we still had to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in defense costs. So I understand, you don't want us to waste money, but sometimes we're forced to do it. This is not about soliciting money so much as doing it in a dangerous place, as the police chief said. And I've witnessed a number of incidents where there have been some dangerous situations, one in which the panhandler was not in the center of the road, but had he been, he would have been crushed by 3 vehicles. And I actually spoke to another constituent who witnessed the same accident. But luckily no one was on that median at the time. In that regard, what I'd like to do is on paragraph 83, which is on page 2, and this would be after the sentence ends where it says from non-moving vehicles. I would like to add to that, and that the following restrictions are authorized pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 31-18-2, local ordinances, and such restrictions are consistent in subject matter and intent with several provisions of state law.
Do you have something you could hand out, Mike, so we could read that while you're, it's getting kind of complicated.
I do have some copies. And these, well, I'll finish this and then I can kind of go through them as they pass it out, if you don't mind. Consistent in subject matter and intent with several provisions of state law designed to protect public safety upon roadways, including without limitation 3118.5, crossing other than at crosswalks, 3118.10, walking in street prohibited, 3118.11, walking, jogging, or running on the left, 3118.12, hitchhiking in a road, and 3118.17, pedestrians on freeways. And I'll wait till they give you those copies if you'd like. And I think this is somewhat in line with what Officer Davis mentioned in terms of some state laws that actually do exist with regard to people being in a roadway. I don't know if you want me to wait, Council President, to do the other amendment? Or?
Well, I have a motion on the First Amendment.
I'll second it.
I have a second on the First Amendment. Director Coop, do you want to explain the First Amendment? Or
no, well, I think it would be...
Or Councilman Favecchio, would you like to explain a little bit?
I can explain it a little bit further. And they're very short. We can give you a copy of each of those state laws, but they're very short and to the point. First, it just says that local authorities are empowered by ordinance to require that pedestrians shall strictly comply with the directions of any official traffic control signal and may be by ordinance prohibit pedestrians from crossing any roadway in a business district or in any designated highways except in a crosswalk, excuse me. And then the 3118.5, which we can get you copies of that as well, is another short one, talks about if you're in a crosswalk, you have to yield the right-of-way to vehicles. 3118.10, walking in the street is prohibited, and if there's a sidewalk available, then you're supposed to use the sidewalk. You're not supposed to run or jog in a roadway, especially if there's a sidewalk available. And the section 3118.11 is a little longer. It talks about walking, jogging, or running. And it basically, if there is no sidewalk, you have to run facing vehicular traffic for safety concerns. So, and I think the last one is hitchhiking. Hitchhiking is not allowed. Let's see. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry. There is one more. 3118.17 talks about pedestrians cannot cross onto a freeway. Pretty simple.
Chair recognizes Councilman Stichels.
Mike, could you give us a kind of an overview of what you're trying to do rather than the specific amendment?
Sure.
I mean, I assume that this all ties together and there's a philosophy behind it, and maybe you could tell us what that is.
Actually, yeah, the second amendment, which would be on line 110 toward the end, actually kind of gives you the overall picture. So why don't I propose that one as well? All right, I'll stay on the first. But it's basically incorporating state law which deals with pedestrians on highways and roads and highways, and what's already on the books from the state level as far as these kind of activities. Okay, I think the general idea is that this is going to be far less restrictive than the way it was before. And you'll see that in the second part, because it's not going to apply to all roadways. It'll address your concern. One of your concerns was, what about side streets?
Let's keep the comments germane to the First Amendment, Councilman.
So, anyway, the first part deals with the state legislative intent and the laws that already apply to people being in roadways. Okay, that's, if you want to. And then I think you know that I'll certainly explain the second part, which will create a much better picture, I think. And these state laws already prohibit those kind of activities, so.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Thank you, Council President. Through the chair to the author of the amendments. So basically, in a nutshell, what you're saying is there are already state laws on the books that the state has passed that reference a lot to do with public safety and what the ordinance we're working on now?
Yes, they deal with each of those separately. That's why each of those state laws are referenced. So they basically will be referenced in this ordinance along with some other things.
Okay, and those laws are already passed, they're on the books?
Those are current state laws.
Current state laws, okay. Thank you, Council President.
Councilman Lanning.
All right, so now we've gone from limiting access to medians in the middle of highways to forbid jogging, walking, running. The only thing we didn't forbid is bicycle riding, unless you're on the left-hand side of the street, or where appropriate, if there's a sidewalk. If there's no sidewalks, you can't go into the roadway. Am I correct?
Well, if I may, Council President.
You may, Councilman Favecchio.
Yeah, I think you can. It's just that you have to face the traffic. You have to run toward the traffic so that your back is not to oncoming traffic.
Well,
so and if there is a sidewalk, you obviously can run on the sidewalk in any direction you want.
All right, so we need more sidewalks in Cranston, is what you're saying, because areas like Alpine Estates, Weston Cranston, you'd be on somebody's lawn, God forbid.
Well, you could be on the roadway. It's just that you have to face the traffic rather than running with the traffic following behind you so that you would not be able to see.
Point of information, these are state laws already on the books that we are adding to this ordinance.
Right, so you're taking state law, excuse me, you're taking state laws, you're adding to a book that, adding to an ordinance that will not pass constitutional amendment to start with, and so you think this is going to make it past constitutional amendments? Well, I don't think so.
Well,
I think did you write these ordinances yourself, or did you have help, Councilman Favecchio?
These were, we had considerable amount of help.
We're discussing the amendment on the ordinance, which is to add
I'd like to know
state law.
I'd like to know who helped him with the ordinance.
You're asking about the ordinance. You did not write the ordinance, Councilman Laney. You wrote the amendments.
I'll ask him about the amendments if you don't mind. Who helped you with the amendments?
I spoke with the solicitor. I spoke with our attorney, Mr. Kirschenbaum.
Director, would you like to inform him how we came to these amendments?
Mr. Coop is also.
Mr. President, I was happy to serve as an intermediary between the outside attorney, the council's attorney, and Councilman Favecchio to try to compile some of this language that was used to draft the amendment. And I think it's important to note that the restrictions in state law that are already on the books are illustrative of the types of restrictions that our state legislator has put on the books, to the best of my knowledge, have never been overturned by any court, and show the types of safety restrictions that are on state roads throughout Rhode Island. There's also a reference to a section of state law that empowers local governments to put their own traffic restrictions by ordinance.
Can local governments put traffic restrictions on state highways?
I believe local governments can put restrictions on the operation of streets within the city, whether it is a city road or a state road. That would be different from an interstate highway or a state highway. Freeways are treated differently than city streets.
And the reason why I asked the question is New London Avenue is a state highway, if I'm not mistaken. So why doesn't the state take care of the panhandling situation at the corner of New London and Saconaset Crossroads instead of the city of Cranston?
Nothing prohibits, Mr. President, nothing prohibits the city of Cranston. In fact, state law empowers the city of Cranston to draft its own ordinances to control the streets within its boundaries.
Thank you, Director.
All right, my final statement, I'm not going to ask a question, is I was at the ordinance committee meeting. I spoke against this particular ordinance. I guess somebody listened because he redrafted it. I still don't think it's going to pass constitutional muster. I think it violates the First Amendment of the Constitution. I and everybody in this council took an oath to protect the U.S. Constitution. We all took that oath, and I intend to abide by it. I will not vote for this particular ordinance at this point. I am waiting to see the new draft. I'm glad that the draft was done behind closed doors. Members of this council were not included in the discussions. It was done by the administration. And I look forward to see what the final outcome of this turns out to be, this new draft, and how it affects the old draft. Thank you.
Any other talk on the amendment? The amendment, Councilman. Councilman Minority Leader. Council Minority Leader.
Thank you.
I can call
Thank you, Council President. I just want to clarify. My understanding is Vice President Favecchio is changing the original ordinance, proposed ordinance, and he's incorporating a number of state statutes within his amendment. These state statutes are already on the books, and basically it's to further reinforce the enforcement of this ordinance. That's my interpretation.
Well, it incorporates the state law into our local law.
Which will further reinforce the ordinance.
Yes.
Yes.
I got a yes. Okay, that's my understanding. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendments? Anyone besides Councilman Stichels who's already spoken before I recognize him? Councilman Stichels.
All right, so this amendment, because you've put it in the preamble, or what is the legal effect? It's in the legislative findings. So does that have any, I guess a question for the lawyers here, does that have any legal binding power, or is it just a statement of, statement of legislative findings, which is not, I don't understand what the point of this is.
Mr. President, through the chair, it shows the legislative intent of this body, but it also shows that the state has laws regarding pedestrians and roadways, and also the state enables local ordinances to enforce those the way they see fit. So it's a preamble just showing the intent behind the ordinance. It's an important introduction because we are modifying and, in a way, also codifying the state laws.
But it doesn't have any binding power. It doesn't change the law.
It's more introductory. It's a preamble, but it's important to note that it's an enactment. It's an enabling statute.
Now, these different items that are cited here, the walking and jogging and hitchhiking, and do Cranston police, if they see somebody out hitchhiking, and they have the right to, they have the power to enforce these state laws?
Ask the chief.
Yes, we're allowed to enforce any state laws.
Okay, so all these laws that are cited, the police could currently have the power, the Cranston police, to enforce them.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, so that wouldn't be any change from the way it is now.
Thank you, Councilman Stichels. I don't know if that was a question or a statement.
Well, it's a statement. If somebody wants to disagree with it, I'd like to have them disagree with it.
No, I think it's legislative intent. Yeah. So does anyone have any additional questions regarding the amendment?
Can I just finish? I'm sorry. I don't quite understand where this is going, but I don't see any point to adding this except as more cover to a ordinance that is aimed at panhandling. And if all these laws are on the books and can be enforced by our police, then they should enforce the law just like they should obey the Constitution. So I'll be opposing this.
Okay. No? Okay. Another question.
I'll ask the crowd to please hold applause. We're trying to conduct a meeting. Thank you. Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I found it interesting that there was again, using social media to encourage people to show up tonight to oppose this ordinance by a member of the council, encouraging them very strongly to come in and speak against it. And I took the time to go to that Facebook page, and I read every single one of those statements. And of the total of 146 people that responded to this councilman's request, 124 of them voted for the amendment, and 22 voted against it. So I'm not that prudent with Facebook, but if I had that many friends that were against me, I might delete some of them. And I don't have my sign that says true, but those are true, accurate statements.
Thank you, Councilman Hopkins. Any additional comments on the amendment? Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll on the amendment.
This is just first.
First amendment.
No.
Yes.
No.
No. Yes.
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 Yes. Councilman Favecchio, your second amendment.
Thank you. Now, this might bring it into clearer focus, so let me read the second one. Now, the second one, and it would go after part of 110, line 110, after the word dividers. Now, that line number may change once the clerk does the First Amendment, but for purposes of tonight, you can read it after that word dividers. We're going to add the following. Provided, however, that the term roadway shall not include any street, road, or highway, one, having a paved surface width no greater than 30 feet as measured from one edge of pavement to the opposite edge of pavement, which measurement shall not include sidewalk areas. Two, is an undivided roadway on which traffic flow is restricted to a single lane of travel in opposing directions or a single lane of travel in one direction. And three, upon which the legal speed limit does not exceed 25 miles per hour. So basically, what this does is permit the exercise of free speech on just about every road, actually. It doesn't prohibit anyone from even on the roads that are more dangerous. However, this roadway restriction basically says it's got to be a 4-lane, it's got to be more than a 2-lane highway, has to have a speed limit greater than 25 miles per hour, and is more than 30 feet in width. So basically, it eliminates, in your example...
I have that in the form of a motion.
Yeah. That's, I'd like to make the motion to make that amendment, the second amendment, on paragraph 110.
Second.
I have a motion and a second under discussion. Councilman Favecchio.
Okay. Thank you, Council President. And this part of this was to address what Councilman Stichels mentioned in the prior meeting, and that was in his own side street, whether he could go out to the milk truck. And I thought of a pretty good example of why we need this type of restriction. Certainly, on the side streets, we're not concerned with as much with the safety issue because there's not a lot of traffic. There are not a lot of accidents on the middle of side streets, possibly yours. And I thought of an example when the ice cream truck comes down the street. They have their service window is on the right-hand side of the vehicle for a reason, because they want people to access from a sidewalk, from a safe place, not in the middle of the street. So I think you might still not be able to transact business in the middle of your street, but certainly your street, you certainly have the ability to go in the middle of the street, no one's going to bother you, and it doesn't apply to your side streets, doesn't apply to mine. It basically says if you're on a major intersection, on a major street where the speed limit is more than 25 miles per hour, and the street is greater than 30 feet wide, and there are multiple lanes of travel, that you shouldn't be standing in the middle transacting business or doing whatever and endangering yourself and the motorists. So that kind of explains this part of it, which greatly, I think, greatly reduces the reach of the ordinance, as you pointed out in the prior meeting. So I think this was, part of it was to address some of your concerns and some of the other councilmen's concerns with regard to the extensiveness of the ordinance. But I think that this greatly restricts it to the areas where, as the mayor spoke and the police chief mentioned, the multitude of incidents and accidents that have occurred, some of which that I also witnessed. So any...
Thank you, Councilman Favicchio. Any additional comments on these changes? Councilman Arquette, Council Minority Leader Arquette.
Thank you, Council President. My understanding, Vice President Favicchio, the Second Amendment narrows the field of roadways.
What it does
to
is
25 miles an hour roadways that have speed limits of 25 miles an hour is acceptable. Over 25 miles, it isn't acceptable.
It has to meet all three of those parameters, so it has to be.
So it narrows the field down. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, considerably. Probably, at 19 to 21 intersections.
Any additional discussion on the amendment? Councilman Stichels.
Yeah, I wondered if the data that that Chief Winquist mentioned, if he could provide that to the members of the council, because that's the first time we've heard that information.
We are going to have to, because we are amending this, Councilman Stichels, we are going to have a special meeting to review that, so I will confer with the administration. They're nodding their heads yes, they will get that to us by the hopefully before the special meeting. Oh, we did, so it's in the data.
It's what?
Apparently it's in the last data set they sent. There was a lot of data they sent about a month ago, so maybe we could.
I don't remember reading anything about people soliciting for nonprofit organizations that don't exist.
Oh yes, yeah, I just got the thumbs up. They will get you that information before the next meeting.
Yeah, I'd just like to make one comment on that.
And if you have any specific questions tonight, Director Coop is prepared to answer some of them. So if you'd like to direct a question to him about any of these incidents.
I don't. The list of people who were arrested for various crimes, who were, I think that they were panhandling or they were in the street, or I don't really see the connection between them being arrested for an offense and then, therefore, we have to
Councilman Stichels, Councilman Stichels, this is not germane to the amendment. We're discussing the amendment, so if you have questions on the amendment, please tailor your comments. After we have reviewed the amendments, we can talk about the bill as amended.
Okay, so you got to meet all three categories here, Mike?
Yes, that's
correct. You have to be 30 feet, less than 30 feet wide. That's number one.
Or no greater than, if it's no greater than 30.
So it exempts you if you're 30 feet or narrower, and the speed limit is 25, and it's an undivided highway on which traffic flow is restricted to a single lane of traffic in opposing directions.
Basically a two-lane highway.
Undivided in that there's no median, is that?
Yes.
Okay,
But
so
usually you don't have a median on two-lane highways anyway. I don't believe we have any.
I think Director Coop has a little something to add.
Mr. President, I will take some credit for assisting more so than with the last amendment offered by Councilman Favicchio, but after much discussion with the attorneys and the council members, as was suggested, I brought our traffic engineer into the conversation and asked him to define for me roads that by their nature would be less dangerous roads that maybe could be exempted from this ordinance, at least at the first pass, separating those from the busier, higher speed roads that are inherently dangerous, as the mayor and the chief of police spoke. And these are the criteria that were set forth for me by the traffic engineer, specifically roads that are no greater than 2 lanes, whether it's 1 lane in each direction or a one-way road, a one-way street, obviously no greater than 30 feet in width, and speed limit 25 or lower. These are residential streets where sometimes Councilman Favicchio had a great analogy. The ice cream truck comes down the street and people go out in the street and buy ice cream. That's not an inherently dangerous situation in the same way that the chief of police and the mayor were talking about the intersection of Park Avenue and Reservoir Avenue. That's the genesis of that amendment.
Thank you, Director. Any additional comments? Clerk, please take the roll on the amendment.
Yes.
Yes.
no.
Yes.
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 Yes. So now that we have the amended ordinance, it is technically before us, but we will have to have a special council meeting within the next 14 days. I will schedule that with the clerk to hear on the ordinance as amended, but tonight I will allow everyone can speak once about the ordinance as amended if you have any concerns, so we're not doing that again at the next meeting, so we can take those back to the administration. If you have questions on data sets, questions to the Colonel, questions for the administration, if you have those ready now, I would love for you to transmit them. If you don't, I would ask that you do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. Councilman Stichels.
Yeah, going back to the data, I'd like to see the data, not just that there are accidents at intersections, because I think that's irrelevant, unless the accidents are caused by a panhandler. And the problem I have is, frankly, the fact that someone commits a crime and they're panhandling doesn't mean that panhandling is therefore should be discouraged in any way. And the example that was given is that a person was soliciting for a nonprofit that didn't exist, which I would think is fraud, and the person should be arrested. I was on the school committee when a member of the school committee was collecting for a charity that didn't exist. And no one reacted to that by saying that the school committee should be abolished. So I think the connection is, on some of those examples, is really irrelevant, and you should take them out of your data because they only weaken your argument. I do want to thank Councilman Favicchio for for narrowing the scope of this ordinance, but I think it is still very, very broad. And when you look at the Portland decision, what Portland tried to do was ban activity on medians. And the court said, no, 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 you can't do that in a blanket statement. You have to focus on the medians where there are problems. That's what the decision was. You have to narrowly tailor the decision, the ordinance. And so this still, even with these reductions, is, I think you'd have to agree, far broader than what Portland was unsuccessful in court with. Portland said medians, and we're saying essentially all roads over 30 feet wide, medians, and everything else. Okay. So,
may I respond?
Yeah, I would. If Mike wants to comment, that would be great.
I agree with Councilman Stikos on this. I'd like to see the data also. I'd like to know how many accidents in the city of Cranston were directly caused by panhandlers. Best of my knowledge, there's none. So we're writing an ordinance to keep people off medians because they may cause accidents or they may get injured, but we don't know of any accidents or injuries to date, other than a retired police officer got up here, Mr. Davis, and said that he witnessed 5 deaths, but he didn't say there were panhandlers, people crossing roads. There are probably more injured bicyclists in this city than panhandlers. And that's why I brought up everything here about jogging, walking, running, but they don't talk about bicycles. That should be added to this also, because I think bicyclists, people on bicycles have to be on one side of the road going with traffic rather than against. In all the years I've driven through the city of Cranston, I see them on both sides of the street. I see joggers on both sides of the street. I see people walking on both sides of the street. I still think this will not pass constitutional muster. I think we're going the wrong direction. And I will vote appropriately. Thank you.
Councilman Arquette. Councilman Arquette.
Thank you, President Farina. First, let me thank everyone coming tonight. I appreciate it. Very informative on all your testimony. Secondly, I'd like to thank Vice President Favecchio for his hard work on those 2 amendments. Mike, I know you're trying to make restrictions and narrow it down, but I agree with Councilman Stikos that I think it's still too broad, and I think it's going to get beat in the federal court. I really do. I have a number of reservations on this ordinance. As I think Councilman Lanny said earlier, we all took an oath of office to uphold the U.S. Constitution, the state constitution, the city charter, and I really think this is a violation of First Amendment rights of a citizen, so I can't support this ordinance. Also, to me, I think it's a person's basic right to ask for help, and if we pass this, we're telling the rest of Rhode Island that we're criminalizing people that are hurting. They need help, and they're asking for help. So that's another reason why I can't support this ordinance. As a historian, as a history teacher, as my colleague here, Mr. Hopkins, also, during the French Revolution, they passed a constitution called the Declaration of Rights of Men. And during that French Republic, a lawyer came to power, Robespierre. And Robespierre, on behalf of the citizens, in the guise of public safety, he passed the Committee of Public Safety. And that Committee of Public Safety stripped numerous First Amendment rights from French citizens. So we have here, under the guise of public safety, we're threatening our First Amendment rights. So I'll be voting no when this comes to the floor. Thank you.
Any further comment? Well, I'm going to say a couple things. I have a couple questions. So, Mike, Council Vice President, if you could ceremoniously take the gavel. To Director Rawson or Attorney Rawson or Director Coop, have we worked with our constitutional attorney on the constitutionality of this ordinance after the amendments without divulging anything we can't.
Mr. President, I did inform our attorney who has represented the city and has advised us in this process of the intended amendment that Councilman Favicchio introduced and was approved. Without going into too much detail, because this is attorney-client communication, I can say that it was reviewed in the context of the Portland, Maine case that's been widely referenced by members of the public and members of the council. That is, the name of that case is Cutting v. City of Portland. In the words of the city's attorney, as such, I think the proposed ordinance meets the two major requirements set out in the First Circuit case of Cutting v. City of Portland and is defensible. The following is my reasoning. I can't go through all the reasoning because it lays out to some extent a legal strategy. I will say the Cutting Court took great exception to the City of Portland's broad definition of the applicable roadways, terming it an all-encompassing ban. The court found that the ordinance was geographically over-inclusive. Cranston's proposed ordinance, however, with the added language, eliminating certain roadways, is not an all-encompassing ban. I think the reduction in applicable roadways is reasonable and will meet the court's admonition to avoid geographical over-inclusiveness. It is my conclusion that the limiting roadway additions of the ordinance is defensible. While we can never be certain, I think the ordinance is a fair and reasonable response to the city's safety concerns.
Thank you, Director. And additionally, I believe Portland, which was referenced ad nauseum tonight, limited all speech on medians. And that would include content-based speech, what this ordinance does not.
My understanding of the ordinance in Portland restricted any sort of speech in the roadways, as opposed to the Cranston ordinance that prohibits the very limited form of speech that is involved in engaging in a transaction.
Thank you, Director Coop. Before I take a vote to move this to another meeting, what I will say is, after the ordinance committee meeting, we had some concerns and reservations. I want to thank Director Coop, Attorney Rawson, Attorney Kirschenbaum, Attorney DeSisto for hearing those concerns and coming back to us with some amendments we could make as a group. Thank you, Councilman Favicchio, for taking the lead on it. So we're going to entertain a motion to continue this. Councilman Paplowskis has not spoke yet, so before I entertain a motion, Councilman Paplowskis.
No, that's fine. I was going to make the motion to move it on, but I do have a request that maybe the colonel or somebody from the police administration be at the next meeting as well if we have any more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also have a question, information question.
It's a question?
Yes.
If it's a question, Councilman Stichels.
Can we get for as soon as possible, the number of miles of roadway in the city that this amended ordinance would cover?
To the administration, number of miles may be difficult. Estimate? Thank you. He'll have an estimate for the next meeting.
I just had a question as well.
Councilman Favicchio.
Thank you. And to follow up on Councilman Stichels' question, I think what he's referring to is the Cutting case, but I don't believe the issue there was how many miles of roadway. I think it was the size and scope of the medians, which is very different and characteristic from Cranston. They have, park-like medians, and that was the issue. They're not the miles of roads that they have, but the huge parks that they have, which are called medians. So I don't know that's going to be necessary to have, if the administration's able to, I don't know how I guess we could calculate it, but I don't know that if that's what your question is, in applying the Cutting decision, I don't think that the number of miles is really going to matter.
I would like the information. I would agree with the way you characterized the Portland decision, but I do think the number of miles is important.
Thank you, Councilman. As confirmed, we will get you an estimate by the next council meeting. Oh, and one, before I entertain a motion to pass the ordinance as amended to a special council meeting, I do want to reference Facebook. My comment exactly at the meeting was, during the campaign, hundreds, if not thousands of people during my campaigning, as I am a citywide councilman, asked us to address public safety and do something about the people standing in the roadways. I also mentioned that 2 hours prior, I had put a little note on Facebook, and 67 of 68 people had mentioned that they were for us trying to do something to ensure public safety. And to address one of the woman's concerns when she said, how about you tell people that we're violating their First Amendment civil rights? Well, a councilman did that, and as Councilman Hopkins said, about 87% of those people said, let's try to do something about public safety. So I'll entertain a motion to send this as amended to a special council meeting at a date certain.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Paplaskas.
Second.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Clerk, please state the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to take a look at the Scribner. Do you need a 5-minute break, or are you good? Yeah, I need one. Want to take 5? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess to let the typists have a break. To the people at home, I'm enjoying a cookie. Thank you. Okay, Claims Committee, Councilman Colford.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to entertain a motion that the report of these settled claims, which were approved by the committee, be voted on to approve these settled claims that we have here listed.
Chairman, as this is your first full council meeting, we only have to report them out. There is no vote. They've already been voted on in the Claims Committee.
Thank you.
So let it be known that these have been reported out of the Claims Committee. Public hearings. The floor is now open to anything anyone would like to talk about. Going once? Going twice? Public hearings is closed. Election of city officials. Arts Commission. I have Leah Tavmassian Hill as an alternate, proposed by Councilman Stikos. Can I have a motion? Councilman Stikos.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have motion and a second on discussion. Councilman Stikos.
Just to let you know this, I don't know who this person is, but she was one of the original people who wanted to be on the commission. She didn't live in Cranston, but she said she was going to move to Cranston. So we didn't nominate her as one of the originals because she didn't yet live in Cranston. She's been attending the meetings. She's endorsed by the Arts Commission, who says she's a valuable addition to the group.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. For the Audit Committee, I would entertain a motion to put Councilman Ken Hopkins on the Audit Committee as the council member.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second under discussion. There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Councilman Hopkins. I do have, it looks like they didn't make it to my copy, but I believe there were 2 more appointments to the Audit Committee that resumes were sent out for, or no?
I had one.
Okay. Could we do them on the special council meeting? Okay, we will do this at the special council meeting. And we'll get you the second one.
Is it?
Yeah, we'll wait till the special meeting. No, we'll make it on the panhandling and the Audit Committee, guys. Unless you're not supposed to go to the special meeting, Director, I don't know what. Okay. Thank you. Okay, City Council Internal Auditor Stephanie Medeiros decided against the position. She feels she wants to spend more time with her family. Politics is a little different, and political positions she wanted to shy away from. So I have a second appointment whose resume was sent to you last week. He's also here for questions if you have them. His name is Christopher Hallstrom. I would entertain a motion to approve Mr. Hallstrom as our internal auditor.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second on discussion. Councilman Stichels.
For Mr. Hallstrom, what's your experience with municipal finance, wherever you are, where you are?
Councilman, including Councilman Stichels, I actually have not worked in municipal finance. I am a taxpayer advocate. I always have been, and I look for the best interest of the taxpayers.
What do you, taxpayer advocate, you mean
I've been working in public accounting in the tax advisory role for the latter of 15 years.
So for people, individuals filing their returns, you advise
individuals,
them on...
corporations, partnerships, estates, trusts, etc.
Okay. As you probably know, there are some Democrats on the council and some Republicans on the council. Do you feel that you'd be working for all the members of the council or just the majority?
I have been a lifelong independent. In spirit, I plan to remain that way. So yes, I think I would serve the members of the council as well as the taxpayers of the city of Cranston.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Hallstrom? Just my comments on Mr. Hallstrom. I've known him for almost a decade now. I find his content is above reproach. He is a straight shooter. He will not do anything one person or body says. He will do what is in the best interest for the people, for his CPA, and he will stand up for the little guy.
Absolutely.
I do. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Hallstrom, will you step forward and get sworn in by the city clerk? Congratulations, Mr. Hallstrom. Look forward to seeing you at the next Finance Committee meeting. Okay. As for grant writer, this position was a little murky. I worked with the clerk. We're going to put the position on hold for a little while. I'm going to actually ask the Finance Committee and Council Vice President Favecchio to review how we currently have the grant writer, looking at different ways of compensation, maybe a per grant basis, see how other cities and towns do it, to see if we could drive additional grants. I thank Mr. Flosky for his service. The goal for this is potentially to have multiple grant writers facilitating grants for us as opposed to just one. So we'll let the Finance Committee review and look and decide and figure out what the best course of action is with grant writing. So I task you, Council Vice President, with that.
Thank you. I think.
Parks and Recreations Advisory Committee, we have to have a majority vote. Councilman Ken Hopkins, I would like you to serve in this capacity because of your history in the Cranston School Department and your history with youth sports, your history in the Cranston athletic fields, working with fields. I think you'd be a welcome addition to the Parks and Recs Advisory Commission. So entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Under discussion. There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
You're recusing yourself.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. The municipal court judges, we're actually going to kick this down to the next council meeting because we have to change the ordinances that we submitted tonight as new business. I'll entertain a motion to continue these three gentlemen to the next. Oh,
point of information.
Point of information.
Council President, I think you skipped the School Buildings Committee.
I did. Thank you, Council Vice President, for keeping me honest. I did, didn't I? So, School Buildings Committee, I picked a majority and a minority member. If the minority does not want Councilman Arquette to be the member, they can present a different member if they so fit, if they so see fit. But if Councilman Arquette accepts the nomination.
Fine.
Thank you, Councilman. So I nominated Trent Colford. I'll accept a motion to approve Mr. Colford to the School Buildings Commission.
Make a motion to accept Trent Colford as buildings.
I have a motion. I have a second. Under discussion, there being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And now on Council Minority Leader Arquette. Entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Under discussion, there being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Recuse.
Yes.
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 Yes. Now, the auxiliary judges, again, referencing, we're kicking this to the next council meeting. I had to submit ordinances to change the structure of the court after some input from Matty Smith, the new chief judge. I will say Anthony Cipriano has withdrawn his application, so I'll entertain a motion to continue Mr. Capello and Mr. Augusta to the next city council meeting in accordance with the ordinances which will go through committee process.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Board of Contract and Purchasing, we have some appointments to make. Council President appointment is Robert DeStefano. Robert's in the room tonight. Thank you for coming in, Robert. Clerk, are we going to swear in Bocap? No, not Bocap. Okay. Sit down, Rob. You're good. You want to get sworn in and get a picture? No, he's good. All right. Majority Leader appointments. Council Majority Leader Pavlauskas.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. For appointment, we have Manny Miguel and Anthony Lamantier. I believe they're currently serving on the board now and wish to continue their service to the city of Cranston.
Thank you very much. Minority Leader appointments. Council Minority Leader Arquette.
I'd like to appoint Anthony Moretti and Richard Del Sesto.
Those being the appointments of the appointing bodies, welcome to BOCAP, the gentlemen who are in the room. The next meeting is when, Director Strom? First Tuesday of February. BOCAP. BOCAP's an important board. I think Moretti's a good mind to have on there, as is Mr. Stefano and Mr. Del Sesto. Mr. Lamanti and Manny Miguel have done a good job. So thank you, gentlemen, for serving. We appreciate it. Report of city officers. We're none? We're good? Okay. Executive communications. Director Coop.
Mr. President, I have one request to continue in service from Captain James Dauber of the Cranston Fire Department, who, having reached the age of 55 but not yet reached the age of 65, requests to continue in service for 1 year, and I have documentation evidencing his eligibility.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve Captain Dauber's service.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. I have motion. Do I have a second? Under discussion, there being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Council President Communications. So I welcome you to my first meeting as Council President. It is an honor to be up here, an honor to serve this city in this capacity. I look forward to having 2 very good years. I can tell you that we're going to be following Robert's rules wherever possible. We're going to keep order and decorum in the chamber. It's going to be a good couple years. I look forward to working with everyone. We're going to keep open door policies. I'm sure after we get through the solicitation ordinance, we can start doing some good work for the city of Cranston in addition to the things that are going on now. The only thing I will say about the solicitation ordinance, being council president, I've learned you can't really speak that much when you're going through laws and ordinances, but there was an overwhelming support for the legislation. We worked together as a group on the Republican side to look at ways to work with our attorneys, to solicit information, to talk things through, and I'm proud of the work that we did. So hopefully we can look at the special committee meeting, have some more people come, get some more testimony, make a final decision on the law. Councilmember Communications, Councilman Stichels.
Okay, I got a couple of quick items that aren't on the list here. One is the Arts Commission is having an open house next Wednesday that everyone's invited to at the Artists Exchange. The second is...
what time, Councilman?
What?
What time?
It's 5:30 to 7:30.
That's next Wednesday?
Yeah, it's not, it's at the Theater 82, which is the one that's down the street, further south. What's there? It's across from the one that, the place that used to be the school. It's near the Syrian grocery store with the...
near a rock.
What?
Yeah, sounds like a description. Near a rock? Is there a boundary? Or?
Right. Yeah, there's a cross street. And
I think it's Loren.
Anyway.
Is that Lorenz?
Through the chair?
Did an email go out?
I believe so. An email went out.
I don't believe it has. I will send one out. I was also going to post the notice on the city website. I believe you have invitations. I think it's at Characters Cafe, isn't it?
Yes, that's...
Thank you, yes.
As I look at the pile of things I ignored when I got in tonight because of the meeting, it is right on here. Thank you.
All right. Second thing to do with the ordinance, I asked for the number of miles that the ordinance would cover. I'd also like a map of what streets would be covered, if I could. All right. Did you hear that? Yep. Okay. All right. Then I just have the 3 items on the agenda. The status of the repayment of the loan to the Cranston West Little League for lights installation at Briggs Farm.
Yes, sorry. Councilman Stichels, if you recall, we had an ordinance by the City Council that was approved back in, it looks like May of 2016. There was a promissory note drawn up in on June 6, 2016 for $113,000. The Cranston West Little League loan, they've only drew on this note $108,517. Currently, they've paid back in September 15th $20,000, October 14th another $10,000. So their current remaining balance as of 1/19/17 is $78,517, and this is a 10-year promissory note. It goes to 2026, I believe. So they're basically ahead of schedule. They told us they would probably be paying this note off in a shorter period of time than 10 years. And currently, they're adhering to that.
Is there a schedule, or?
No, there's not. There's not a current schedule.
But so you're saying they're ahead of time because you divided up 10 years by 113,000? Or?
I don't have a schedule.
Yeah, it's in a note.
It's in the loan agreement? Well, that's... Okay. Councilman, Director Coop has told me that in the note, which I didn't see, they have to pay a minimum per year of $10,800. So within a year so far, they've already paid $30,000. So they're ahead of schedule.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item is the status of additional points being awarded to applicants for new jobs who speak a second language.
Yeah, Mr. President, that's something that Councilman Stichos and I discussed when his proposal first came out. I have had our labor and employment advisors look at some other cities and towns and come up with some alternative proposals the way it's done. We've looked those over. It's still going to need some work. I haven't gotten any farther than that yet, but it's something that's still being worked on.
And I don't remember if I mentioned this to you about Central Falls. Was they one of the communities you looked at? I know they do it.
I have to go back and look again. I don't remember which ones, but if not, I will look at theirs as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any timeline when you think you'll be ready?
At this point, I don't, but I'll let you know. I'll take a look at it again.
Okay, thank you. And the last is an update on the, I can never remember the official name, but the Discovery Trail Historic Marker Grant.
Yeah, unfortunately, Councilman, I can't address that. I'm not sure which one that is, and Jeff Barone is out sick, so he was not available as a resource to me today. So I don't have any information on that, but I'll check with him when he gets back and have him contact you directly.
Maybe we could put it on the finance agenda.
Sure, that's acceptable. Sure. Okay.
Yep. Thank you very much,
Councilman Arquette. Councilman Leader Arquette.
Thank you, Council President Friend. Just one item. I received a call from Representative Charlene Lima, who stated that several members of the senior manor, presidential manor on Grant Avenue, I know there's a typo, it says Grant, but it's Grant, G-R-A-N-T. There's dumping in that area. The residents have been complaining, so through the chair, to the administration, if we could get some highway department employees over there to pick up the trash and then monitor it in that area, it'd be helpful.
Oh, will do. You're welcome.
That concludes everything on the docket for councilmember communications. Any other councilmember communications tonight? There being none, we'll move to the Rules Committee. Councilman Favicchio came up to me tonight and said that there were some changes he wanted to make to the rules, so he wanted to call in the Rules Committee meeting. So.
Yeah, I would make that request because I was running out of time. I think I would have violated the label was if I put it in any more time after the other ordinance. So,
thank you, Councilman. So, I look to you to make another. Do you have a date set yet?
Well, I'm not sure where it's supposed to go. Actually, does it go to the
Rules Committee? Yeah. Do you call another meeting of the Rules Committee
meeting? I would like to piggyback it with one of the other.
You want to try to piggyback the?
We can post the notice when we have a date established.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to send the rules back to the Rules Committee for further changes and amendments and fixes.
So moved.
When a date is set, so it'll be in the next 2 weeks or weeks.
Second.
Who made the? Somebody made the motion.
I have a motion from Councilman Favicchio and a second from Councilman Paplowskis. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Introduction of new business.
The following proposed ordinances to be referred to the Ordinance Committee for hearing on February 16th. Ordinance number 1-1701, an amendment of Title 10, Chapter 28 of the Code of the City of Cranston, Motor Vehicles and Traffic for overnight parking permits. Ordinance number 1-1702, an amendment of Chapter 17 of the Code of the City of Cranston, entitled Zoning for Electronic Filing of Planning or Land Use Documents. Proposed ordinance 1-1705, an amendment of Chapter 10.12.260 of the Code of the City of Cranston entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic for one-way streets enumerated for Cornell Street. Proposed ordinance 1-1709, an amendment of Chapter 17.24 of the Code of the City of Cranston entitled Zoning Performance Standards for Licensed Cultivators. Proposed ordinance 1-1710, an amendment of Chapter 17 of the Code of the City of Cranston 2005 entitled Zoning, Establishing a Garden City Center Development District. That is erroneously listed on the docket as being referred to March 16th. It will be, in fact, be heard on February 16th. I have the, do you want to do them by committee? I have some more.
And I wasn't paying attention. It's my fault, Maria. Continue.
That's okay. The following ordinances to be referred to the Finance Committee for hearing on February 6th. Proposed ordinance 1-1703, an amendment of Title II of the Code of the City of Cranston entitled Administration and Personnel for Municipal Court Judges' Salaries. Proposed ordinance 1-1704, an amendment of Title 2.40.020 of the Code of the City of Cranston 2005 entitled Administration and Personnel Municipal Court for the appointment, term, and qualification of judges. Proposed ordinance 1-1706, ratifying school committee's collective bargaining agreement with the Cranston Teachers Alliance Local 1704 for the teachers unit. Proposed ordinance 1-1707, ordinance ratifying school committee's collective bargaining agreement with the Cranston Teachers Alliance Local 1704 for the teacher assistant bus aids unit. Proposed ordinance 1-1708, ratifying the school committee's collective bargaining agreement with the Cranston Teachers Alliance Local 1704 for the technical assistance unit. Then we have one ordinance to be referred to the Ordinance Committee for hearing on March 16th. That is 1-1711, an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan of 2010 for solar performance standards. Then we have the following new claims to be referred to the Claims Committee for hearing on Monday, February 6th. These are all property damage claims. Fritz Baronet from an alleged incident on October 31, 2016. Michaela Murray from an alleged incident on November 23, 2016. Leonard McKenney from an alleged incident on December 17, 2016. Robert Haratunian from an alleged incident on December 17, 2016. Frank Chin from an alleged incident on January 6, 2017. Robert Casey from an alleged incident on January 12, 2017. Matthew Page from an alleged incident on January 16, 2017. Charles Junod from an alleged incident on or about January 7th or 8th of 2017, and Carlos and Marianne Soares from an alleged incident on January 7th, 2017. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That being the new business of the City Council, I'll entertain a motion to send it to the appropriate committees.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. There being no miscellaneous business on the City Clerk's desk, the City Council's next regularly monthly meeting will be held on Monday, February 27th, 2017.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Oh, yeah, they're better.
Nice job, Mike. Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
see, even if the camera's on.